Friends, welcome to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. I returned home after a hard day at the office and did not see my wife. "Jane," I called, climbing the stairs. "I'm home." "I'll be right down, Tarzan. It was our little joke. We met at a costume party where I was dressed as Tarzan. We almost bumped into each other, and I said, 'I'm sorry, "You're Tarzan," she interrupted, poking me in the chest. "I'm Jane." Pointing at her amazing cleavage, she laughed. It turned out that her real name was Jane, and from then on we were Tarzan and Jane. We had been married for what seemed to me like 5 happy years, and I opened a beer, sat on the couch, and turned on the 6 o'clock news. The headlines ended when Jane came down the stairs. My eyes almost popped out of their sockets. She was wearing my favorite LBD. It reached to mid-thigh, and while the neckline might not have been red carpet-worthy, it wasn't modest. I knew she was completely backless, which meant she wasn't wearing a bra, although the movement of her breasts still gave it away. She was also wearing a necklace that I gave her for our anniversary, just a month ago. I took my phone to capture this vision for posterity, although I didn't know what I would really need it for. "Wow! I didn't know we were dating. Let me freshen up a bit and change my clothes. By the way, where are we going?" "We're not going anywhere. Robert Cohen invited me to dinner and dancing tonight. I'll probably be late, so don't wait for me." Bob Cohen, the dog who was banned from all company parties after he got involved with too many married women? He's not like that. It was just an anxious fool with a jealous husband who caused all the trouble. Well, there's a jealous husband here too who says there's no way I'm going to let you date him. "I don't belong to you," she said, heading for the door. "You may not belong to me, but when we made our marriage vows, we gave ourselves to each other. It means something to me. I thought it meant something to you." "Oh, don't be so medieval. It's the 21st century. No one believes in this shit anymore." I wish you had told me about this earlier so that we could get divorced and date whoever we want." "Divorce?" She threw her head back with a laugh. Following her to the door, I grabbed an old friend from the closet when Alexis pulled into the driveway. "Here's Robert. Order yourself a pizza or something." She walked out the door. "Jane," I said, and when she turned around, I tore off her dress, leaving her standing there in just a tight black thong and heels. She froze for a moment, then ran back into the house. I headed for the Lexus, tapping the Louisville bump on my left palm, and Cohen backed up, burning rubber to speed away. Nodding to the neighbors who liked Jane's free show, I returned to the house, returning the bat to the closet. I took a fresh beer, as the first one had already warmed up, and sat down again waiting for the fireworks. I didn't have to wait long before Jane came downstairs wrapped in a bathrobe, and she was furious. I couldn't keep track of how she was ranting and raving, as Paul Simon said. I heard words that I had never heard in the Bible. I just sat there until she calmed down. "What were you thinking? What were you counting on?" I asked. "I don't know. Our lives have become so routine that we never seem to have as much fun as we used to." "How is it that I'm only hearing about this now? Not to mention the last few times I've tried to get you to do something else. You've always been too busy or not interested, or it was disgusting. Even if you could somehow justify cheating, why humiliate me with this attempt to cuckold me in public?" "Because I didn't want to cheat. I thought if I told you, it wouldn't be cheating. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Making love to another person without my permission is definitely cheating." "Maybe you'll let me," she said, looking at me hopefully. "You're really crazy. I need to get out of here before I say or do something that one of us or both of us will regret." I grabbed the keys and jumped out before she could get up from her chair. I did what any other manly man would do in this situation. I went to my favorite bar to cry in my beer. "What's the matter, John?" Sam said, putting another bottle in front of me. "You look like you've lost your best friend." "Maybe you're not that far off the mark, Sam. When I came home tonight, Jane was dressed to the nines and told me that she was coming from this job and that I might not wait for her." "Of course you told her no." "Of course I said that. What kind of asshole do you take me for?" I was just about to wipe the silly grin off his face when he said, "I'm just messing with you, man. So what happened next?" Oh, she was telling me all the usual nonsense about how I don't own her, that loyalty is medieval. "I take it you didn't buy it." Ding, 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 ding. I got it in one copy. Right at that moment, this jerk pulled into the driveway, and Jane headed for the door. "What are you saying? What did you do?" I grabbed a persuasion tool from the closet, followed her, and tore off her dress right on the street. She froze for a minute, then realized that all the neighbors could see her in her thong, and ran back into the house. I went to the car with my persuader, batting in Louisville. It looks like this is a victory for you. So, what brings you to my humble establishment? The victory was short-lived. I was sipping a beer when she came downstairs, pouting like a bear. When she calmed down a bit, she started talking nonsense again. Our love life was a routine. It wouldn't be cheating if she didn't do it behind my back if I gave her permission. Sam was speechless. That's when I had to get out of there. And here I am. Sam opened a couple more cold bottles. We clinked glasses and drank. I had another drink before I decided I'd better stop before risking an accident. Good night and good luck, John. Thanks, Sam. I think I'm going to need this. When I got home, Jane was already in bed. I completed my evening routines, pulled on my pajama bottoms, and got into bed with my back to Jane. As I was falling asleep, I thought I heard her soft sobs, but I ignored them. When I came downstairs, Jane was already up and cooking breakfast. Breakfast was quiet until we finished cleaning and Jane started again. John, why can't you see that times have changed? No one expects to spend their whole life with just one person. Well, I don't think I'm alone. As for being with one person all our lives, neither of us was a virgin. We dated others. You know that's not what I mean. We were just kids then. We barely knew where we were going. Now we have more experience, more opportunities for comparison. I don't need to compare anything. I compared a lot before I asked you to marry me, and I asked you because I knew you were the one I wanted to spend my life with. When you said yes, you said you felt the same way. Were you lying? No, but... But what? Have you changed your mind? If so, then maybe we should get a divorce. I don't want a divorce. Well, you can't have both. If you don't want a divorce, then you'll have to forget this nonsense. Lowering her eyes, she said, I don't want a divorce. So it's settled, I said, although I wasn't sure. Although Jane claimed that she had given up on the idea of another man, I found it hard to believe her. I worried every time she came in later than expected, especially if she didn't call back on time. I assumed that she might still want to take a lover, but this time behind my back, and started trying to check on her. Oh, I didn't hire a private investigator. I didn't put a bug on her phone or a GPS on her car. I just started dropping by her place for lunch on random days, calling her at unexpected times. I could feel the tension building between us, and I'm sure she felt it too. It even affected our lovemaking. It was less spontaneous, more careful, without the passion that was before it all started. Finally, I lost my temper. Jane, I want to get a divorce. She was shell-shocked. No? But I thought we were okay? Really? Do you think that everything is fine with us? That we are somewhere close to where we were before when everything was fine with us? She lowered her eyes and shook her head. Telling my parents was the hardest part. They couldn't understand why we couldn't fix everything. When my father-in-law cornered me one day, I showed him a photo of her half-dressed, and he backed away. We faced a lot of questions from the family. I let the guilt pour over me to spare Jane the embarrassment, but in the end I had to show everyone the photo and tell them what she was trying to do. Having received the full program from her family, she came to me in search of sympathy. John, isn't there anything I can do to change your mind about the divorce? I put my hand to my chin and thought. I came up with an idea that she would never agree with. Okay, Jane, I won't stop the divorce, but I'll postpone it on one condition. Her mood has improved significantly. Anything, John, anything. Be careful when you say that. Anything is a lot. I'm not worried, she said. I'm sure you won't go crazy. What is the condition? I'll let you date other men as long as I can date other women. I was sure I saw her smirk before she hid behind a sickly sweet smile. Of course, John, that's fair. What a fool. I bet she didn't think I could find another woman. There's something else, I said. What? You can't date until I make a date. She seemed agitated. I knew she had a boyfriend in mind, and I thought she was worried about what would happen if I didn't find anyone. I decided to throw her a bone. If I can't find a date in 2 weeks, you can go on your date. It brought out one of the brightest smiles I've seen from her in recent weeks, and she wrapped her arms around my neck and kissed me. That's great, John, thank you. You'll see, this will be exactly what will revive our marriage. Yes, it will revive him, or pour him into the toilet. A few days later, she was shocked when I told her that I had a date and offered to arrange a double date next Friday. She probably thought I was bluffing and that she was going to have a date while I was sitting at home all alone. Unbeknownst to Jane, I had arranged a date that I hoped would put an end to this nonsense once and for all. On Monday, I had a long lunch to buy new clothes and left them in the car. I left work early on Friday so I could get my hair done and get home before Jane. I sneaked into the guest room with my new clothes and was in the shower when I heard the garage door open, shaved, and after brushing my teeth, went to the bedroom to finish my preparations. I think I surprised her when I left the guest room in a new outfit and with a new hairstyle, but she quickly came to her senses. "Robert will pick me up at 6:30. "It's okay. We've booked a table at Amelia's for 7 o'clock. They're in my name in case you get there before us," I said, walking out the door. What Jane didn't know was that we had a new employee at work, Candide DeSantis. Candide was a red-haired bombshell who made every red-blooded American man turn his head whenever she passed by. She was completely professional and never gave office gossips a reason to whisper. We struck up a casual friendship, and when she flirted with me from time to time, I politely showed her my wedding ring. Needless to say, she was curious when I invited her to have a drink with me after work. I got to the bar before her and was staring into my glass when she came in. "So, John, what happened to rip the last American Boy Scout out of his shell?" she said with a laugh. One look into my sad eyes brought her out of her teasing mood. "Oh, John, I'm so sorry," she said, putting a warm hand on top of mine. "I didn't mean to tease you, but you're usually so straightforward. You look like you've lost your best friend." My eyes started to water and I turned away. She put her arm around my shoulders and led me to a table, and I took my drink. She sat patiently while I gathered my courage and told her my sad story. "Well," she said, "there's only one thing we can do." "We?" "Yes, we are. I'll be your date." I laughed for the first time since Jane came up with this crazy idea. "Why are you laughing? I'm serious." I stared into her eyes for a few moments, expecting a loud "gotcha" that never came, and finally realized that she was serious. "Why? Why me? I know you don't mess with married men. Damn it, you hardly mess with single men either. If they thought they had half a chance, all the straight people and half the gay people in the office would be lining up to date you. I'm not just looking for a date. As you say, I can date any guy I want. I like you very much. Maybe it's because you don't always undress me with your eyes." "Yes," I said, "not always. I know that sometimes you do it. You have to be dead to never do it. But you always treat me with respect. When we meet, you listen to my ideas. You support me when other guys try to brush them off because they come from me. More importantly, I like you. And I'm mad at your wife for being so disrespectful to you. So are we on a date or not? I may have been born at night, but not last night. You're in business." I finished the rest of my drink and walked Candide to her car. She gave me her number, gave me a friendly hug, and left. I thought that my life would become very interesting. When I arrived at Candide's house, I barely had time to get out and open the door before she got to the car. She was a little taller than Jane, but still shorter than me. Unlike Jane's LBD on her ill-fated date, Candide's dress was slightly longer than the knee, but fitted with a slit on the left side almost to the hip. It was an emerald green color that set off her wavy bright red hair that reached to the middle of her waist. He had more cleavage than I'd ever seen Jane wear, and Candide almost slipped when I helped her into the car. When I got into the driver's seat, I was treated to a creamy white thigh before she straightened her dress, giving me a big smile. "We'll have plenty of time for that later, cowboy," she said. I had to clean myself up before I went, feeling awkward from her guttural laughter. As if I didn't feel shy enough, she started rubbing my thigh, making my erection rise again. Fortunately, we arrived at the restaurant before things went too far, and I was under self-control when we entered the restaurant. Jane and Robert were already there. I saw Robert several times, and his appearance that evening made no more impression on me than the other times I saw him. Jane, on the other hand, lost her temper, and I can't remember ever seeing her this hot. Robert did not get up, so I did not extend my hand to him, but only nodded to Jane, helping Candide to sit down. Jane was obviously amazed that I had arranged such a great date. I think she was going to make some sarcastic remark, but changed her mind. Robert, on the other hand, couldn't take his eyes off Candide's cleavage, and Jane had to elbow him in the ribs to make sure his gaze wasn't wandering. I thought dinner might be awkward, but after a hesitant start, a casual observer would think we were just two ordinary couples, not husband and wife with different partners. After dinner, we went to the club for a drink and a dance. When the dancing was fast, there were no special problems. But when the slow dance started and Candide snuggled up to me, Jane's gaze could kill. Jane began to rub against Robert. It looked like she was trying to make love to him right on the dance floor. She was attracting the kind of attention that would normally embarrass her. But she was in her own little world. When Robert's hand reached under her dress to stroke her breasts, I was embarrassed for her and took Candide back to the table. We continued to watch Jane and Robert put on a show until finally the manager came over and patted them on the shoulder. Although I obviously didn't hear what they were talking about, they were apparently asked to leave, as Jane ran to the table in tears, grabbed her cape and left the club, with Robert quickly following on her heels. "Well, of course you know how to have a good time with a girl," Candide said, giggling. I could only laugh, and we went back to the dance floor. When we were ready to leave, I approached the manager. "I would like to apologize for our companions," I said. "Don't think about it, there are no complaints, sir. You see, it was my wife, or rather my future ex-wife, and I think she was a little jealous of my date." The manager was a little puzzled, then looked Candide up and down. "I understand, sir," he said with a smile. "Please come at any time," he said, returning to his duties. I took Candide to her apartment and walked her to the door. When I bent down to give her a friendly goodnight kiss, she surprised me by pulling me towards her for a passionate kiss. "Do you want to come in for a drink at night?" "What is it?" she asked. For some reason, it seemed to me that she had something more on her mind than just a nightcap, but who am I to argue? The cup was forgotten as soon as the door closed when she pushed me onto the couch and straddled my lap. The slit on her dress opened wide, giving me a tantalizing look at the lace panties. She unbuttoned the top of her dress, allowing it to fall to her waist, exposing her firm breasts. I wasted no time pressing my lips to one and massaging the other. And indeed, soon she slid to the floor and unbuttoned my trousers. With a smile, she licked the bottom and around the tip. She did it painfully slowly, and I didn't know how long I would last. She slowly moved away until only the head was in her mouth, and circled the head with her tongue before slowly taking even more into her mouth. She moved back and forth, slowly at first, then faster. As she moved faster and faster, I knew I was going to explode soon and tried to get her attention, but she just smiled at me until I filled my mouth with liquid. She climbed back onto the sofa and snuggled up to me. I put my arm around her shoulders and lazily played with her breasts. I pulled free and continued to kiss her sinuous body. When I got to the waist, where the dress was still pulled up, I knelt over her legs, grabbed the dress and panties and pulled them off her legs. I took a moment to appreciate the indescribable beauty lying in front of me, then began stroking and kissing her graceful legs as I ascended to the supreme treasure. I made one pass up her slit, causing a moan of pleasure. She spread her legs, inviting me to enter. Sinking back down, I spread my lips with my fingers, thrusting my tongue as far as possible, while she rocked her hips back and forth. I gave her a few moments to recover before kneeling between her legs. Before I could make my move, she squirmed until she was on all fours, her perfect heart-shaped ass sticking out in the air. It was obvious that she wanted me to take her doggy style, and it occurred to me for a moment that despite all Jane's complaints about our stale love life, Jane had never allowed me to use her that way. She said it was humiliating. Well, it was obvious that Candide did not share this point of view, and soon I easily plunged myself to the hilt. Candide made it clear what she wanted. "Use me," she said. "Use me hard," and I did. Fortunately, I was able to hold out until Candide felt another pressure before I shot my seed at her. I rolled over next to her, and she slid next to me, resting her head on my shoulder. Lying there, I had a nervous thought. Candide, in my excitement, I forgot to use a condom." "It's okay, I'm taking pills." I took her chin between my thumb and forefinger, lifted her head and kissed her, gently sliding my tongue to meet her tongue. Our lips worked in harmony as my hand reached down to stroke her breast, gently pinching her nipple. I turned to rub her breasts, then began to move down her body, pausing only for a moment to plunge my tongue into her navel. She ran her fingers through my hair, and her hips squeezed my head so hard that it felt like my head was in a vice. Fortunately, she soon experienced a strong pressure and eased the pressure. I took a deep breath. I returned to her body and casually kissed her face. She greedily licked our combined juices off my face. Sensing her desire, I propped myself up on my elbows and began to use it selflessly. I do not know how long we made love, but it seemed to me that it took only a few moments before we burst into mutual love. As we drifted into a blissful sleep, I thought I didn't know where Jane got the idea that our love life was boring and routine. But if my time with Candide was any indication, it became clear that it wasn't because of me. I spent the night at Candide's, waking up to gentle pleasures. We showered separately, and while she was finishing, I made her breakfast. "Wow," she said. "A great lover and also cooks? I can just keep you close." "About that," I said when we sat down at the table. "I really like you, and last night was absolutely the best love I've ever had in my life, but I need to solve problems in my marriage, and even if we get divorced, I do not know how soon I will be ready for another relationship." "Don't worry, John. I was just teasing you. Don't get me wrong, I like you too. And if everything works out, of course I can see us in a relationship. But you're right. First, you have to settle things with your wife." We finished eating, just chatting about nothing until I decided I had to go home and see if anything could be saved from our marriage. I walked in and saw Jane sitting at the kitchen table, clutching a coffee cup. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. One look at my contented face caused her to burst into tears again. I took a cup of coffee and sat down opposite her. "So, how was your night with Robert?" "Oh, John, it was terrible. All I could think about was you and Candide. She's so sweet and beautiful. I know I'll never be able to compete with her." "You realize that you wouldn't have to worry about competition if you hadn't started this nonsense." She couldn't meet my eyes, but she nodded in agreement. "I think I can say for sure that you wouldn't feel so sorry if it were just you and Robert and I was left sitting at home alone." She raised her eyes full of tears, then lowered them and nodded again. "I just don't know what to do. Part of me just wants to kick you to the curb and start over with someone new." Jane was openly crying now. I'm sure she was thinking about me with Candide. Then I look at you and I see the woman I married, the woman I fell in love with. I don't see an evil fool, but a stupid girl. And I hope that there is a way back for us. Jane looked up, hope shining through her tears. "I'm going to change my clothes and go out for a while. While I'm gone, I think you should move your things to the guest room. We'll talk more when I get back. Please don't make me move, John. How can we be together again if we're apart? I need you now more than ever. You don't understand what's going on. It's not a fact that we'll be together again. Maybe you should have thought about how much you needed me before you started this," I said before going up to my bedroom. Jane was sitting at the table when I went downstairs and headed for the door. "John," she said, and I turned around. "I love you." I just nodded and left the house. I know it sounds cold, but I needed her to feel how shaky our marriage was. I went down to the Charles River and wandered along the shore, watching the rowers in their boats and sailboats dancing on the water. I was sitting on a bench when I came across several families with young children. I felt sad when I wondered if I would ever see the children Jane and I were talking about. I don't know how long I sat there, but as the sun went down, I started to feel cold. Taking a deep breath, I got to my feet and trudged home. When I entered the house, Jane was still sitting where I had left her. She looked at me hopefully, but I just shook my head sadly, went up to my room and locked the door. I kicked off my shoes and stretched out on the bed fully dressed, covering my eyes with my hand. I don't know how long I lay there before I heard a soft knock on the door and a whisper, "John." I didn't answer, and after the second attempt, I heard her walk down the hall to the guest room. After making sure she went to bed, I took a quick shower and fell into a restless sleep. When I went downstairs, I found that Jane had prepared a hearty breakfast, and to my surprise, I had a good appetite, although Jane was just picking at the food. "John," she said, "do you think we could try to see a psychologist?" Consulting. I turned it over in my mind. I really didn't know much about counseling. Would they try to convince me to accept Jane's stupidity? If they try to do that, then I can just run away. Did I want to settle everything? One of the things I learned from my night with Candide was that our love life had become boring and routine. Do I really want to go back to that? I was still angry that Jane never came to me with complaints. I decided that I had enough love for Jane in my heart for now, and I didn't want to give up without a fight. "Okay, Jane, let's try to consult." She almost jumped out of her chair. "Let's get one thing straight right now," I said. "I don't need a counselor who wants to save our marriage. Maybe he can be saved, and maybe not. I will not tolerate any hidden intentions." I could tell she was disappointed. She must have been hoping for some new-age hippie psychoanalyst who would agree with her times have changed philosophy, but she had no choice but to agree. The consultation was surprisingly effective. Jane had to see how her refusal to work with me actually affected her dissatisfaction with our love life, and I realized that I needed to be more assertive. We talked more about what we want, what we need, what we expect from our love life. Although the consultation helped us deal with many of our problems, I was still fixated on her betrayal, even if I didn't let her complete it. For her part, Jane couldn't overcome her insecurities revolving around Candide. No matter how much I explained that although I had some feelings for Candide, I wasn't in love with her, and our date was just a return shot. She just didn't take it in. In the end, we decided to get a good divorce. As soon as the divorce became final, I took stock of my life. No, I didn't contact Candide right away. Instead, I booked a room at a bed and breakfast on the coast of Maine. It was pre-season, so the weather was questionable, but it suited my mood. I just wanted to relax and dig into myself a little bit, deciding where I want to go. When I got back, I called Candide. We went to dinner and I let her put me to bed, but it was more for comfort than passion. The next morning, as we lay in bed, I lazily played with her breasts. A penny for your thoughts, John. I was thinking about how easy it would be to just pick you up and ask you to do it forever. And the easy way is not always the best. Yes, we have a real connection. She smiled at me slyly. Get your thoughts out of the gutter. I don't just mean love, pervert. I really like you, and I know that I can easily fall in love with you, but I do not know if this would be fair to both of us. My divorce is still very fresh and undigested, and I'm worried it might lead to a rebound. I think it would be better if we both saw each other for a while, as well as each other. I do not know how long this can last, and I will not ask you to wait until I come to my senses. I'd like to argue with you, but I'm afraid you're right, she said. Although I really think that we should succeed, it's probably better to be sure than to regret later. We got out of bed, used the bathroom, took a separate shower, and then had a quiet breakfast. I was tempted to throw caution to the wind and forget about meeting others, and I think Candide would have agreed, but I was determined. We finished cleaning, she walked me to the door, and we hugged with tears in our eyes. I think it's goodbye, she said. No, I don't agree. Why don't we meet for dinner, say 2 weeks after Friday, just to check on how things are going? Okay, she said, kissed me on the cheek and led me out the door. The sound of the door closing was like the sound of a cell door, and I wasn't sure if I hadn't made the worst mistake of my life. I spent the rest of the week doubting my sanity. On Friday, I decided to join my friends for dinner and drinks. We were sitting in a corner booth at the back of the restaurant. I was facing the door. We were just finishing dessert when I saw her come in. Candide was with a tall, handsome guy. Who am I kidding? Of course he was tall and handsome. I was torn apart as to whether I should come over and say hello, but decided that this would not be consistent with our parting. I was disappointed by how quickly she seemed to replace me. I guess you can call me a coward because I waited until she went to the bathroom before throwing some cash on the table and quickly saying goodnight to my friends. I was angry at her for not waiting long to get back into the game, and even more angry at myself. It was something we both agreed to. One thing was for sure, I was going to make an appointment. I flatter myself that I'm a pretty good catch, and I had no problem making a date for next Friday night. Her name was Cheryl Thompson. She worked as a secretary for one of my clients, and in the past we had exchanged innocent flirtations. She knew that I was married, but readily agreed when I made it clear that I was divorced. I always thought Cheryl was attractive for business, but I wasn't ready for the vision that greeted me at her door, and I think my surprise was obvious. I think I've prepared pretty well, she said. That's an understatement. Do you look like you're ready to go? Yes, just let me put on my raincoat. I helped her put the cloak over her shoulders, and we set off. Dinner was with the usual chatter on the first date, except for talking about my divorce. She was shocked by Jane's actions. I decided to put my cards on the table for coffee and dessert. Cheryl, I don't want to lie to you. On the eve of my divorce, I got involved with a woman, and after my divorce we became quite serious. We were both concerned about how fast we were moving and the risks of rebuilding a relationship, and decided that we should date other people for a while. I don't want you to think that I'm just using you as a placeholder or something. I am completely open to what can happen, wherever it leads. There was a charming ring to her laughter. John, this is just our first date. I don't expect any commitment, but I appreciate your honesty. Like you said, let's just play it by ear and see where it leads. After this awkwardness was over, we went on a very pleasant date, which ended with a warm kiss on the lips and a date for the following Saturday. Meanwhile, I had a dinner date with Candide on Friday, and I had no idea how it was going to happen. I took her hands and she was as beautiful as ever. We talked casually on the way to the restaurant, but as soon as we gave the waiter our orders, she became serious. You know, I saw you. I just raised my eyebrows. I was at dinner and saw you with your friends. I was going to come over and say hello, but when I came out of the bathroom, you were gone. I was a little confused. I know we agreed that we would date others, but seeing you with another man so soon, well, I guess I was a little jealous. It's stupid, I know, but John, you had no reason to be jealous. Stefan was an old friend of mine whom I hadn't seen for a long time, and when he called, I took advantage of our break to accept his invitation to dinner. I'm sorry if it upset you. No need to apologize. Any disorder was in my own head. In fact, it inspired me to get off my ass and ask someone out on a date. We had dinner last week. Now it was her turn to raise her eyebrows. Should I be jealous? She asked with a smile. Oh, I don't think so, although we have another date for tomorrow night. We both agree that there is no commitment, just two people getting together to have a good time. That's sweet, she said with a wistful smile. You deserve to have a good time. We were saved from further awkward conversations by the arrival of our lunches, and the conversation turned to more pleasant topics. Do you want to go dancing? I asked, holding the car door open for her. No, I think it would be better if you took me home. She drove home quietly, looking out the window. We went to her door, kissed, maybe with a little more fervor than we intended, and gently pushed off from each other. Please stay in touch, John. I'll do that. Good night, Candide, I said, and hurriedly retreated to my car before trying to drag her inside. My date with Cheryl went well, and our goodnight kiss was more heated, with a little fondling, but we broke up anyway before things went too far. Although I talked to Candide about every week, our paths did not cross. I do not know if we subconsciously avoided each other, or if it was just fate. I saw Cheryl a few more times and we actually ended up in bed, and it was fun, but there was no spark. When we were lying in bed after the third night of love, Cheryl dropped a bomb on me. John, I think this should be the last time. What? I thought we were doing well. Oh, that's right. Maybe even too good. Now your words don't make sense. John, when we started, we said no commitment, and I said I wasn't looking for any commitment. I didn't have them and I don't have them, but I'm developing feelings for you, and if we keep going, I think we can go somewhere I'm just not ready to go. I'd rather hurt you now, before the feelings get too deep, than later, when it really hurts you. I hope this makes sense. In a strange way, it is so. I can't say it doesn't hurt, but I'll get over it. I got dressed, kissed her on the forehead, and headed for the door. Good night, Cheryl. Goodbye, John, she said with a sad smile, tears glistening in her eyes. Closing the door behind her, I considered my next move. My next step was a series of women. Some of them were one-night stands, some were mini-relationships, although none of them were as serious as with Cheryl. Finally, I realized what was missing in my life and picked up the phone. Hello? She said. Candide, it's me, John, I said, completely forgetting that she had a caller ID. Candide, I do not know how you are doing, but I am no longer worried about the selections. I had more rebounds than I did in pinball, and I'm on the rise. If I can still be with you, I want to go home. There was silence on the other end of the line, and I was afraid that I had missed my chance. How soon can you come? The epilogue. Jane did not leave the city in disgrace, and did not live a lonely life surrounded by her cats. She certainly wasn't looking for a job in a Mexican brothel. While I wasn't really interested in knowing this, but mutual friends told me that she was dating, although there didn't seem to be anyone she was dating seriously. Candide wanted to invite Jane to the wedding. Although I wasn't sure if it was such a good idea, I didn't mind, but Jane refused, sending a nice gift. I was surprised when Candide struck up a casual friendship with Jane, meeting from time to time for coffee or shopping. It didn't bother me, although of course it was unusual. About 6 months after we got married, I returned home and found that Candide was dressed for going out. Oh, I thought, here we are again. Fortunately, my fears turned out to be unfounded. Go change, Jane and I are meeting at Amelia's for dinner. Look, I know you two have become quite friendly, but don't you think this is a little too much? Don't worry, darling, my madness has a system. I knew I couldn't argue with her when she had an idea in her head, so I just shrugged and went to change. Jane was already waiting on the spot, and to call the situation awkward would be an understatement. Candide and Jane greeted each other with kisses on the cheek, as all women do, while I just stood there feeling awkward. None of us seemed to know what to do. Then Jane spoke up. "John, it's good to see you. You look good." "Thank you, Jane. You look good too." We were spared even more awkwardness by being escorted to our table. Candide paused for a moment, saying something to the man behind the counter. "What does it all mean?" I asked when she caught up with us. "You have nothing to worry about, dear," she said. "Now every husband knows that when his wife says nothing, it means something, and he should be worried. But again, there was nothing I could do but play along and hope for the best." Jane sat on my right, and Candide sat across from me, and before we could order drinks, the host and Stefan came over. Candida stood up, gave him a friendly hug, and sat him down on my left opposite Jane, and her insidious plan became obvious. While I was relieved that my worst fears turned out to be unfounded, this evening really had the makings of a disaster. Fortunately, Jane and Stefan seemed to get along. The conversation flowed smoothly throughout the dinner, and from the looks of it, we were like 4 old friends. Too soon it seemed, it was time to leave. Stefan and I split the check, and while Candide and I were leaving, Jane and Stefan decided to continue the evening at the restaurant bar. Candide was so cocky, but I couldn't get mad. Although it may not be for long, they clearly got off to a good start. I made amends for underestimating her by giving her a sensual massage and then worshiping at her altar. We maintained cordial, albeit distant, relationships with Jane and Stefan. We rarely talked as couples, although we often met in a group. Apparently they have a stable relationship. Jane doesn't seem to need to revive them anymore. We wish them all the best. Candide and I couldn't be happier, although the baby's kicking really wakes her up at night.